Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. Yes, I shaved my head. Anyway, I'm making this video because I received some comments recently from an individual. I won't say their screen name because, as you all know, I'm not in the habit of doing that unless I have permission, but I'm going to respond to some of the comments I received and sort of mull over some of the things that they said to me via private message and also on the comment section of my Exodus research project video. Um, I want you all to know that I posted my term paper for my comparative religion class, and the link to see it is I posted on my blog, so the link is in the description section. Um, and so, yeah, just take a look at that and comment on my blog, etc. It's sort of, I'm using that as sort of the intro to launch off into future blog posts that I'll be doing on this subject of the Exodus and my research with regards to that. But anyway, so I thought I would mention that because that pertains to this video and this response. The individual sent me a private message, which I'd like to deal with first. And it's in response to the idea that the subject title is, "Did the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, authors plagiarize from pagan stories?" And I guess I haven't been really clear with what I've been talking about lately. I've never claimed in any of my videos that that I know for a fact that plagiarism actually took place. I'm actually more of the opinion in shared tradition at this point. The theory that, you know, you basically, stories were told and shared and people sort of mixed stories. But I'm really into the idea, the Jungian idea of archetypes and the collective unconscious, and that really a lot of these things, these archetypal motifs that we see come up for us because they are a part of our species. As a species, we have a liking for these stories, motifs, because it has a lot to do with our psyche. And so I've never said that I absolutely am convinced that there was plagiarism that went down with regards to the flood and with Exodus. Now, I don't know if this, the private message has quotations from an author. And I don't know if it says that the narrator also charges Judaism with copying aspects of pagan religions. And I don't know if this is directed towards me specifically. Again, I don't recall using the word plagiarism anywhere. But this may just be from a separate book, but it says that the claim that the story of Noah's Ark was copied from the Epic of Gilgamesh. And then they're citing an Old Testament scholar that talks about the resemblances of the Genesis narrative suggests a common origin in ancient oral tradition. But then there's the differences. And of course, I mean, when you study mythology and you study religious texts, you may see commonalities, but then there are these differences that occur. And taking a cue from Carl Jung's theory of the collective unconscious and motifs, the understanding is that there were these core archetypal motifs that started, that this is the origin of these stories, is that you speak the story from an original source. If there are variations that do occur, it's because there are obvious variations for that reason, because you have from each culture may, you know, hear a story and then change things. That's one theory, at least. But what's interesting is they go about talking about, the author then talks about different cultures having this story. And I'm not going to read the whole thing out loud. I'm digging for some of the key points. Okay. Then the person actually mentions, you know, Sumerians, Babylonians, Assyrians, Mesopotamia may have cherished this story because of the fact that this took place in, you know, that Noah was from this area, or these, they call it the Antevalian civilization. Possibly the Egyptian legend reported in Plato's Timaeus and Menetho's version, which has a flood because of the proximity to the Fertile Crescent, etc., etc. Again, this author that's being quoted here is hypothesizing himself. He has no evidence for what he's saying. This theory is just as valid as anybody else's. But then he goes a lot further and he says, but what can we say about the legend of Manu, which is a Hindu flood story? What of Fahi among the Chinese? What about Nu'u among the Hawaiians, or Tespi among the Mexican Indians, or Manas Bazohor among the Alcuin Native Americans that were destroyed by a great flood, and then usually it's because of divine displeasure and human sin, and that a single man with his family, or very few, survive. What's the deal with this? And then he says, thus, far from disproving the story of Noah's Ark, the parallels between the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Genesis flood, along with many other flood stories throughout the history, lend credibility to the possibility that a massive flood occurred as the Bible describes. Okay, so that again is a theory, and again it is a valid theory. I'm not saying that that's totally incorrect, but let's keep in mind some questions here. One, does each flood story and each religion that these flood stories or cultures that these flood stories are from, do they all say that it was a global flood? From my understanding, and I believe the user who sent this to me is a Muslim, from my understanding, Muslim tafsirs and historians have always said that Noah's flood was a local flood, that it was not a global flood. Another thing that needs to be remembered is that there is no archaeological evidence for a global flood. So if we are going to take this story literally, which has sort of been my point since I've started this project, is must we take these stories literally or symbolically? If we take it literally, then there must be evidence of a global flood. From my understanding, there is no such evidence. This has been one of the debates from scientists and then creationists. I'm talking about in the Christian camp, is that this claim about the how old the Earth is, how old the solar system is, how old the universe is, and then is there a global flood? From my understanding, there is no evidence for a global flood. Now, if someone would like to come along and show me evidence for that, I would love to see that. But from my understanding, there is no evidence for a global flood, which is why the Islamic version of the story is actually makes a lot more sense if it is understood that it was just Noah's people that were wiped out and not the entire planet. So I'm kind of curious as to why this is being, if this person is indeed a Muslim, I'm kind of confused as to why he or she is using I believe a Christian or excuse me, maybe it's a Jewish scholar's evidence, because of course they believe that it was a global flood. So really what this does is this, all these stories, what this proves is that all these cultures around the world had very similar stories about a flood. A flood occurred in their culture, in their region, in their religious texts. And whether this proves one epic event, I think that's debatable, considering that the people's interpretation of their stories may not necessarily indicate that it was indeed a global flood. And even if that were the case, is there actual evidence that there ever was a global flood? He then goes on, the author goes on to talk about Moses and Sargon. Now, again, I don't think I said anywhere in my previous video, nor do I have made this claim, that for a fact that the Hebrews stole this from the Assyrians. Now, one thing that I want to point out is the dating for the Assyrian text, and I've seen this exact dating before, is around the 7th century, BCE, give or take. We're not sure about the dating, and the author is correct about that. We cannot know for certain. The Exodus, however, from various sources, one is the Learning Bible that I have here, which has been published by the American Bible Association, and also Who Wrote the Bible, very famous book by Richard Elliott Friedman, are of the opinion that this was written during the time when Israel split into two kingdoms, so around the 7th century. So this is actually a very fascinating fact, because if we take the latter date for the Sargon legend, it was written, theoretically, right around the same time as the Exodus story. So both stories are being penned around the same time. We know that a lot of biblical scholars agree with this dating of the Exodus story. I mean, as you can even check Wikipedia, it says that this is not a consensus, but there's a lot of great evidence. Many scholars of various traditions and religious backgrounds have assumed this dating throughout the years, or at least have been led to assume the dating later because of the physical evidence of the text of the Torah, being that it wasn't written by one person and not all written down at the same time. And then the author goes to show the differences between the two. Again, I'm not saying that the stories are exact. There of course are differences, but I want to note the last paragraph. The author who is being quoted by this user, the concluding paragraph says, Lewis concludes that the likeliness that Sargon and Moses are both drawing on a common archetype, that both stories are fictional, using reasoning not unlike that of Warner Kebler. Of course, we disagree with the use of the motif necessitating fiction, as we have amply argued on other venues. Now, again, I'm saying this is all theorizing at this point, but I do find it fascinating that the author that was quoted to talk about the parallels between Sargon and the Moses story concludes that, in his opinion, this is archetypal motif. In other words, it's going with this idea of rehashed motifs from different places. But yet the author who's quoting this other author is saying, oh no, but we don't agree with that. Well, again, on what basis do you reject this claim? Again, if we're going with theories here, that theory of archetypal motif is just as valid as the theory of saying, well, I disagree. We can agree to disagree with that, but again, to say that, oh, well, you know, because you have these differences, but as the author clearly states, there are many factors of the Moses story that do occur in other myths and other stories, and as I stated in my video on the subject, Otto Rank, who's one of the earliest persons to talk about this subject, the birth of the hero, in his book, he clearly indicates this, that there are many major motifs, parts of the stories that do occur across the board in various cultures. Of course, they're not all the same, and I never said that. Otto Rank does not say that, but there are these core parts of the stories that do make them very similar to each other. And to simply dismiss it because of dating or questionable dating, the fact is that if we go with the earliest and the latest date for the Sargon story, it's actually coincides with the dating of the Torah being written. And then you come into this question of, well, then it's like a chicken and the egg question. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, what came first, the Sargon or Moses story? The point is that we shouldn't even limit this discussion to Sargon. What one should do is check out Otto Rank's book for themselves and look at the long list of various people that were this motif of a hero being born, having an infancy of epic proportion, of sublime proportion, of unusual circumstances, and then thus they become a great hero after their birth and the circumstances surrounding their birth. So we don't even have to limit this to Sargon. I simply pointed it out because that was the first time I had ever heard of this, and which led me to research the story of the Exodus in its entirety. So the last thing I'd like to point out is on a comment, and that's pretty much my summary of the private message. The comment was that it is clear your Kufar professor is an atheist trying to instill doubts in the mind of his pupils. Wow. First off, I never even mentioned the background of my professor, first off. So if I had said that my professor was a Muslim professor of comparative religion, then that might shock a whole bunch of you. But no, actually, I'm not sure what his background is. He hasn't told us. However, he is not an atheist, from my understanding. And even if he was, the way he teaches his class, because this person is not in my class, so this is again an assumption on this person's part, that he's trying to cause doubt in our minds. Not at all. He's encouraging us to look at each religion on its own merit. And whether when he's talking about mythology, he simply pointed out the theories of others. He didn't say that this is a fact. In fact, he taught us the three major hermeneutics in class, one of which is an atheist position, which is the symbolic reductionist perspective, which is that all religious motifs, all mythological motifs are simply us trying to understand the world around us, and so we invent divinity. That's only one of the theories. He taught us the other two theories. One is that, no, these stories really are a product of God, of a divine being, or beings if you're a polytheist, to teach you something, or to convey a message. And the third is the symbolic formist perspective, which is that these are symbolic, these are metaphors, and that they are supposed to teach us something about our psyche, and that the debate about whether it's God or no God is not the debate. The question is, what do the stories mean on a symbolic, metaphorical level? So he's not trying to cast doubt into anybody's minds. He is simply showing us different perspectives. But thank you for trying to judge a professor of comparative religion without even being in the class. Thank you for that. Thank you everyone for watching. Hopefully this wasn't very hostile. I actually thank the person for sending me the messages. Peace be with you all.